This is Ian Taylor of the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast, and you're listening to the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Great pull, kid.
Congratulations, you're liberated. Scoot. I don't know. Free your brothers and sisters or something. Just give me some space.
Everything's gonna be all right, kid.
You found the Rebel Base Card Podcast.
She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts, kid.
I'm your host, Greg McLaughlin.
Have I made a few bad decisions? Sure.
We talk about cards, collecting Star Wars, and to people in the Star Wars community.
Don't worry, we're gonna meet up with some friends of mine.
Look for special episodes called The Breakfast Pack, talking about your favorite Star Wars shows.
We will never have a better chance than this.
All right, let's get started.
Well, perhaps it is time to begin again.
Welcome back, or if this is your first episode, welcome aboard. My name is Greg McLaughlin, and this is the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Hope you all are doing all right. We are in the throes of September, so it's fall and all the pumpkin spice whatevers that you can handle. I'm kind of happy to be out of summer personally because the heat and me don't get along that well, and so I just prefer a nice hoodie or sweater, or that sweater weather, as the meme likes to say. And I just like it when it gets a little crisp and the seasons start to change and all that. But that doesn't always necessarily happen for my guest tonight. I have sketch card artist Ian McKesson, who is here, who was recently at the Burbank Card Show and also had done some work on the 2024 Toppps Star Wars Chrome. So we're going to talk to him here in a few minutes. But I just wanted to kind of just say that I hope all of you are pulling some good Star Wars Chrome. I'm really finding I like the release. I've been kind of working on my set and kind of getting ready to do a autograph rainbow, as it were. And I know that prices have gone up as far as hobby boxes are concerned, but I am still finding blaster boxes in the wild. And I'm also seeing on some of the groups that some people are also pulling some very nice things from blasters. But however you're getting it, whether you're doing the Breaker's Delight or you're doing the hobby boxes or you're getting a blaster box, I think this is a great release. It's kind of weird. We're only 2 releases into the year, technically. And really, this is the first major one. So, like we said, we're at September, so other stuff may be happening. I hope it all doesn't jam up. But right now, it's Toppps Star Wars Chrome. And of course, as you've been hearing me talk about Star Wars Unlimited, and we've had that great episode a couple ones back on it, we have Twilight of the Republic coming out in November. I've been able to kind of get some gaming in, but we have high school volleyball, so that's going to dictate my life for the next several weeks. But at any rate, so once again, Ian McKesson is going to be on the program, and we'll be right back right after this.
Hi, this is Josh Trout, artist for Toppps, and you are listening to the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Great pull, kid.
You can waste time with your friends when your chores are done. Now, come on, get to it.
I'm going to do just a little bit of Homestead keeping because this conversation with Ian was recorded before the big announcement by Toppps on September 12th. So I'm just going to give you sort of a crux of it, and then in the weeks and days ahead, and you can follow me on the socials, I've already kind of posted some of the details, but Toppps made a very large deal today with Disney to get more rights to do Disney, Pixar, and Marvel cards globally. As it stands, if you are in the apps, you notice that you have Marvel Collect, Disney Collect, but Toppps did not have the physical rights to do cards in the U.S. They only had them outside the U.S. Recently, we had the 2024 Marvel Chrome that was released in overseas, and you've probably seen that on some of the socials. And actually, if you're in the Marvel Collect app, you have seen the some of the Marvel Chrome cards there as well. But I'm just going to read this, some of this verbatim from the Toppps press release. I was very thankful to get today. But it says, today, Toppps announced a major expansion of their existing overall deal with Disney Consumer Products to include global Disney, Pixar, and Marvel trading card rights. New Marvel collectible trading cards will hit retail and hobby shops in Q1 2025, and they also announced with the Toppps Finest X-Men 97. That'll be the first product that they're going to launch under this new agreement. For the first time, Toppps has developed and distributed physical Marvel trading cards globally. Like I said, they only had them rights outside the U.S. And then basically it said that Topps will continue their global Star Wars collaboration. Of course, Topps has had an agreement with Topps since basically 1977 with the original cards. Now, under this expanded deal, Disney Consumer Products and Topps will collaborate on physical and digital trading cards for Disney, Pixar, Marvel, and Star Wars globally. Topps previously released Disney, Pixar, and Marvel digital collectibles via the Disney Collect and Marvel Collect apps. While this is an expansion globally, especially in the U.S., Topps has previously sold Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars trading cards in Europe, Middle East, and Africa through Topps.com and through Topps at local fan conventions. Now, there are some quotes in this release as well from some folks at Topps, which I will kind of hold off because I am still sort of kind of doing some of my research on this, and I've been reaching out to some various folks who I'm hopefully going to have on the podcast soon because this impacts a lot, right? Upper Deck has had the rights to do Marvel cards, and they also had some of the Disney rights as well. So once again, when Fanatics bought Topps, right, they had done deals with some of the players' associations, so Panini was going to lose some of those licenses and for the NFL and the NBA, and that kind of is coming down the road as we get into 2025 and 2026. In this case, Upper Deck is losing the license for Marvel, Disney, and Pixar. So starting next year in quarter one, we're going to get our first look at Marvel cards under the Topps banner in the U.S. Once again, this is going to be kind of a shift. Now, Upper Deck has picked up DC. So from what I understand, a lot of those resources that they have, the personnel and whatnot, are going to be working on DC instead of obviously Marvel, which has been a pretty good moneymaker for them. Obviously, we've had Ian Taylor from the Marvel Card Collectors podcast on, and and so forth, and we have talked before about Marvel cards, and they are very popular. And of course, COVID had made everything much more popular. But in this case, like I said, according to this release and the news, so essentially, we weren't sure after the Topps acquisition by Fanatics whether or not how serious they were about non-sport. And of course, this year with sort of the minimal release of Star Wars physical cards, you were kind of curious, was the non-sport going to be sent off to Upper Deck, or whatnot? So it looks like Fanatics, and I don't have any kind of dollar values yet. Fanatics has obviously put some meat behind Topps to acquire these licenses to sell Marvel, Disney, and Pixar globally, and that includes the United States. And so we're going to see our first taste of that next year. I'm kind of happy because I like Marvel Collect, I like Disney Collect, and so and knowing some of the folks on the digital side, looks like they're going to be staying put and continuing to crank out even more stuff. So another kind of shift. And, Fanatics just keeps growing and keeps acquiring properties. And so we'll be kind of curious how this goes about. Once again, this is not a day story. This is going to be unfolding as far as its impact. And I'm hoping to kind of bring you more insight from around the hobby in the weeks ahead. I just wanted to kind of say that. Let's get back to our interview with Ian. I'll see you on the other side.
Hi, this is Adam from Garbage Chute Droids, and you're listening to the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Great pull, kid.
We're in attack position now, sir.
Hold here.
We're not going to attack.
I have my orders from the Emperor himself. He has something special planned for me. We only need to keep him from escaping.
I am very excited because, Ian, it's we've kind of passed each other like two skateboards in the night. I'm going to pretend that I'm good on a skateboard. Actually, I really suck on a skateboard. But,
dangerous.
One of the things that I first kind of wanted to ask you, and I think this is because, when I see profiles of sketch artists, I don't often see salons written on them. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. So I see what I would expect to see on an artist page. I see a lot of great art and love for the soccer. And you go, okay, that's kind of interesting. But when I saw the salon, that's what kind of was like, well, wait a minute. I got to find out what's going on. But so I would like to start there first and ask, what is the deal, and how does it all kind of play into what you're doing now?
Yeah, hey, great to finally be on here, Greg. I know we've tried for a long time, but this is perfect timing. It is an exciting time to be a Star Wars fan and a Star Wars artist. And my wife and I, we own a hair salon, and we've owned two in the past. We've owned two at the same time for a long time, and I could not be more glad that we don't own two at the same time anymore. It was wild. But it's been an amazing career for me. About 18 years in, I was an art student dropout, as a lot of art friends of mine. Just built a portfolio in junior college, went to San Francisco, moved from Laguna to San Francisco, and fully expected still to go to more school, and saw the life my wife girlfriend then, had been making with, a great hair salon, to high end of hair salons in San Francisco, and realized that could be something I could do that still felt artistic and something that I can kind of shape and create things still using my hands, which I was fortunate to be able to do, and still have my hobbies on the side, a lot of sports, skateboarding, I DJ'd for a long time, so I could still do all the other stuff and have a career that I sort of didn't mind going to work. And I had no homework, because that was the most crucial aspect for me for a career I could enjoy, was that I didn't have to take it home with me and I could go do all those other things. So yeah, 18 years later, a couple salons, and still don't mind cutting people's hair. Sure.
And don't let the fact that you see the chrome dome here say that I'm not interested. I am fascinated by hair. I remember I had it in the 80s when it was important.
Yeah, awesome. That was a great time to have good hair.
It was a great time to have great hair. I had some good hair. But I think that, when you're a business owner, co-owner, what have you, you've really got to be everything. And although you say, yes, I don't have to take it home, right? You're not carrying projects over, but I do think that does, it's always kind of in the back of your mind. It's always sort of there, as far as whatever I get there, from the time that I get myself there, you have a different clock in your head than maybe someone that is under your hire, or, something like that.
Sure.
So, what are the things you think that learning, did you have to learn to kind of be a business owner, or was it kind of in the family? How did you kind of cut your teeth, from there, or did she already kind of have it? Kind of explain that part, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, look, we were not prepared to be business owners, and we are not business school savvy. We didn't write a business proposal, and we essentially both were doing hair at a salon in San Diego after we had moved from San Francisco down. And we knew, long-term, long run, we would want to own our own salon. So we were setting ourselves up and considering before you're a business owner, you consider what you think a business owner is supposed to know how to do. Mm-hmm. And then we kind of just circumstantially, timing wise, ran into where us taking over the salon that we worked at made way more sense than trying to start a new one or leaving that one. And so we just took a swing at it, essentially, and learned completely on the fly. And to your point too, of you don't have to take, I don't go home and cut more hair, but absolutely you do have to, the buck stops with you, something isn't working, and someone else at the salon is on their way out on Saturday afternoon, is like, oh yeah, by the way, the air conditioning stopped working. See you Tuesday. And you're just like, oh, okay. Or the back door won't lock. Okay, see ya.
Peace out.
Exactly. Peace out. See ya. The sink is overflowing. And so, we're kind of laughing about it before we started, but you instantly become the IT department, the marketing department, the trash picker-upper, the toilet plunger. I mean, there's some fun aspects of being a business owner that sound cool, and there is plenty of nobody else wants to do this and it has to get done-ness to being a business owner that can be a headache, can be complicated, but can also be extremely rewarding, obviously, to kind of create the environment that you want to work in and who you want to work with and what music you want to listen to, and not have to, you can just decide you want to work a little more this week to take next week off, or to be doing some more art for this coming up period if you have a deadline with Toppps coming up. So there's plenty of aspects that I really enjoy and love and don't take for granted about owning our own business. And there's also plenty that are all consuming.
I think, though, in the people that I have talked to and the artists I've talked to over the years of doing this, I think that there's probably nothing that can probably prepare you better for a life in art, whether it's a full-time, whether it's a part-time, than having a business or already, like kind of being engaged in, because I think that like you're alluding to, when you're a sketch artist, time is critical, because whereas in the past, Toppps might have given, or whether you're working for Toppps, Upper Deck, Rittenhouse,
Sure.
the lead time, I think, over the years has changed and has shrunk. And I think as far as like knowing, like, so let's say, for example, you get your first, you're commissioned by Toppps and you're like, man, this is exciting, but how many do I want to do? Do I want to do 15? Do I want to do 50? Do I want to do 100? And do I have the workflow? It's one thing to be able to like, all right, yeah, I can do sketches, and now I've got to do them for a small card. But now I have to do X amount. And not only do that, but then there's this whole other thing we'll talk about, which is the promotion of said and how I do it, how I kind of run this as almost a business. I've got to negotiate I got to talk to Toppps. I've got to negotiate my time and all that. But so when you kind of hit the ground running, did you already kind of feel like, okay, I can kind of figure this out, or was it really starting from zero all over again?
I mean, as far as doing licensed commission work, definitely the first real foray I had into that. And so I had certainly done some art projects for people, more one-offs, or designing someone's tattoo, of course, or, just about a year before that, I was featured in Thrasher magazine, which is a skateboarding magazine, which is definitely all time for me, probably my favorite magazine my whole life. Been involved in skateboarding for a long time. I also am afraid of the skateboard now as I get older, but loved that thing a lot when I was younger and still love it, but it's definitely dangerous. But to the point of working on those deadlines and working in the new aspect of everything you said about sketch cards, it was daunting. And it was, truthfully, when I set my work into Toppps, I had just seen all that Project 2020, really liked that they were working with artists and really liked this whole concept. I was really, again, I did all the skateboarding stuff. I had done a lot of baseball and soccer stuff. And I sent in my work just, again, hoping to collaborate on something. And they were like, yep, we really like it. Would you want to work on Star Wars? And I mean, that was a huge gift that they gave me. And I love Star Wars, not just because I get to work on it now. I mean, I was a Star Wars, like, nerdy kid that waited a week to see Phantom Menace in Newport, the biggest theater we had in Orange County, with a bunch of buddies. And so it wasn't just sort of like, oh, cool, yeah, I could find I was like into it. I could name the planets where people were from. Not quite, fully wear the costume, but certainly like know what planet people were from, and a little deeper than just like the surface level Star Wars fan. So when they gave me the opportunity to do that, I was like, yep, I would love to do that. But I didn't even still at that point didn't know what sketch cards in sets were. I had this hilarious, when I look back on it, hilarious like email back and forth with the guy. I was like, wait. So I don't paint like a full-size painting that you guys make smaller to reproduce cards. Like, you're going to send me blank cards for me to work on? And so I got to draw like the size, like on the card. That's how big I have to draw it. And they were like, yeah, that's how it works. I was like, okay, cool. Yep, I definitely want to do it. Send me however many. And the minimum then I think was like 30 for my first set, which was Galaxy 22.
Okay.
And actually it was 45. 45 is how many I did for my first set. And I was just like, yep, I'm ready. And I was at this point in my life, post-COVID, we had 2 salons that had been closed down. Got way back into doing as much art as possible. That's how I got the Thrasher feature, and was just saying yes to whatever anybody threw at me at this point in my life. So again, I had no idea if I was going to be able to work like that on that size. I started just practicing. I started tracing cards out on watercolor paper and seeing if they looked cool that size. And now I've worked on, I think, at least 12 or 13 sets since then. And continue, lucky enough, I get to continue working on all these sets, a couple of them as we speak. But it's always daunting. Some deadlines, I mean, I've had deadline as little literally as 3 days from when the cards actually got to us and they needed to get back. It's way better now, but it's also, again, it's still daunting as opportunities continue to come in, and now you're trying to do a little bit for this company, a little bit of these, try to mix in some regular work, try to mix in some just all of and anything that we can, as well as, again, continue to run a business. So owning a business and working towards something that doesn't happen unless you do it, obviously different than being an employee and someone else will just I guess have to do it if you don't do it. I think definitely helped me in the regard to be able to handle what doing this freelance work is, because it's all on you. I mean, you agree to do something, and if you don't do it or don't do it well, or don't, aren't responsible with the time and actually take a realistic amount and get back, then you probably aren't going to get invited back. And you probably are, or you take on too many and you don't do a very good job, and then the work suffers, and then your reputation essentially suffers a little bit because all those cards get out there. So, it's about figuring out what workflow works best, I think, for the individual. Certainly with some of the artists that I see that are unbelievable and take so much time and can only do small amounts, to whereas other artists take on massive amounts of cards, but find a way to make that work for them too. So a lot of ways to do it, I think.
Well, let's look at, so for example, you have a pretty great Instagram presence, I'm assuming.
Thanks.
Along with the whatnots and all that, but how did you kind of pivot your social media to kind of take advantage of some of the new art, or was it already kind of like, yeah, I'm already kind of doing this anyway, I'm just throwing some Star Wars up? Did you actually really, or did you think about having a strategy, or was it just sort of par for the course?
Yeah, well, as far as par for the course, it's more like I just use my same personal Instagram I've always used. I didn't make like a new art Instagram like some people definitely do. And I could see both being valuable depending on how you're using it. I think most of the people that follow me or that knew me already know me as kind of an artsy skateboard music kid. So it wasn't going to be a pivot of my Instagram to show as much art as it is now. But it's funny, my wife and I laughed about it recently. It's like, your Instagram now is just like an art page, which is amazing for me that I get this outlet and I get to connect with people who are into the same things that I'm into: skateboarding, soccer, Star Wars, and a bunch of other things as well, pop culture and music. But now I get to show off some work and connect with people through that work. So it's been an easy pivot in the sense of being able to just show stuff. The hardest part for me is honestly waiting until things come out to be able to share the work. I mean, like a Marvel set I just did for essentially Upper Deck, but it was Skybox Metal. I did those cards almost 2 years ago to the day. And
wow,
they finally released and I can finally show them, and they feel so old to me. And there's so much new stuff that I'm like, can't wait to let you guys see what I'm doing now, but can't. And so that's actually one of the weirdly hardest parts about utilizing it correctly, but also benefiting you. Because I guess back to your previous question too, the biggest part as an artist too is it's not a huge pay that you get from Toppps to do these sketch cards, right, as is well documented. But the most important thing you do with it is how you essentially kind of use that as a tool to enhance your reputation, or have people find your work, or hit you up for commissions, or however you're trying to utilize it. That's the key component, I think. However, people are what they're trying to do with that. And for me, it's definitely been about trying to get more work and do more art. And I think Instagram is crucial for me for that, for connecting with other artists, connecting with other people who collect art, as well as the whole community of people. The Star Wars card community is easily the best card community that I've experienced. And that's why I love jumping on Whatnot a lot. I think my presence in other people's shows, as well as like just in the card community in general, has really benefited me as an artist, but also because I'm the same dude who's buying the boxes, like you said, trying to find boxes at GameStop and trying to find Target. Every time I stop at Target, I'm definitely checking to see what they got. And my son and I for sure are nerdy with soccer cards. So there's definitely that aspect. So I'm one of you, you know what I mean? I'm a collector. If you could see these records, I mean, I've collected since I was a kid, a nerdy collector. So easy for me to want to be in those same rooms and see these different cards. I'm sure we'll talk about it in a minute, but this new release of like how much numbered stuff is coming out, how cool the cards look, and then to get to see finally one of your little babies that you drew a year ago, pop its way out is an unbelievable feeling and experience that I hope never gets old to me, because I love that.
That, yeah, the vinyl that you had behind you, which I almost feel like, all right, I want you to move out of the frame. I'm going to take a picture of that background. I'm going to use it for my default. Yeah, my default Zoom background, because that is a gorgeous collection of vinyl.
Oh, thanks, dude. That's literally it's a whole L-shaped. I mean, I don't know how much you could see, but like there's a couple of techniques. That's all records underneath, 2 different shelves. In fact, it goes kind of down over there. It's probably overdone a little bit, but I'm very proud of a lot of the music that's in there since I was 15, for sure. Used to save my lunch money and like eat the rest of my friends' lunch, and then wait to go on the weekend to this punk rock store in Huntington Beach, Vinyl Solution, and just buy like 4 7-inches that were $2.50 each. You know, amazing times, but never stop.
Yeah, I did have to liquidate some vinyl, but I think it's one of those where I think my Asia, the 3 Asia albums, you will pretty much have to take out of my cold dead hands, because I'm like, I've loved that. I love the artwork on those, and some of that I'm like, no, that's not going away anytime soon. I
mean, it's those stories of like, you know, like I can remember where I got them. I mean, I have the Smiths record, Louder Than Bombs, that at a perfect time for me in my life at like 17 years old, I found at a bookstore for $1, perfect condition. And they had all the Zeppelin records at the same place too. Someone had just like, they had a tiny selection of records. They were all dope. And it cost me like $32 for all of them. And I'll never forget that experience, because that was like, again, perfect time of my life to like find these bands that are, you know, so important to me still, and for $1, you know what I mean? And like, to your point too, like opening a vinyl record with the whole like artwork and how it was meant to be looked at, and how it was designed by the band and the art department and the artists, and how they put those songs together. There's just something about that is, you know, different than what is out there in the world these days. But
and I also remember at the radio station I worked at in college, where if we got colored vinyl in, it usually didn't hang around very long, because someone was like, I like my colored vinyl. And that's one of the nice things about this sort of revival of sorts, where, you know, artists are putting it out and there is some thought about it, because they're, you know, the music will sound the way it sounds, and you can argue, you know, for and against, but I think when you look at the artwork on it and the liner notes, like you're looking at it, it is, that is so gorgeous. What we're looking at is this really gorgeous red piece of vinyl, but it's also, you know, it's got black and white.
Yeah, it's like candy apple red, I think, is the actual, what they call that type. I mean, yeah, it's just a different experience. Like, and owning a tangible piece, again, this will take us right back into Star Wars collecting, any kind of collecting. It's owning a tangible piece of something that is limited, even if it's to 50,000, 100 million. It is a piece of pressed vinyl and a piece of art that is the way it was designed to be created. Is, as a collecting person, there's still something about like holding it in your hand, finding it at the store, putting it on the first time, like finding your favorite song when you did, is that I hope remains that important to me forever, you know.
Especially like the deep cuts, right? Because you let it go and all of a sudden you're like, oh, hey, you know, you could look at Kiss Dynasty one of two ways. You can like this is their disco album, but you kind of get deep in it and you go, hey, look, that is all right. That's kind of anyway. Or if you have all 4 of the Kiss solo albums, and I know Dan's there if he's listening. Kiss is one of his favorite bands, but I remember like, you know, having the four solos together, and you go, okay, that's really wild.
It's great. I did an art piece for a buddy fairly recently where he had all 4, and we did each one with a different like color concept behind them. That was a super fun project for me.
I also like, and this kind of goes into, I'm skipping around a little bit, but in looking at the card you did recently where you're doing like the Brady, and it just kind of reminds me of the graffiti type thing. And it's one of those things where I'm like, there's 2 kind of people that are waiting when there's a train. There's the ones that are kind of like going, I can't believe it. And also I sit there and I'll look at the graffiti on the trains go by and I go, I don't understand it. I'm not going to pretend that I understand it. But it fascinates me, especially when you look at and you'll see like, well, that's just tagging, but that right there is like there's shading, there's shadows, there's there's gradients,
concepts. 100% design, 2 and 3D design sometimes. For sure. Look, it's all incredible to me, and it's definitely the art cards that I take cards and I kind of graffiti them up and I put some of my line work behind them. Has been incredible for me. It's shocking to talk about the Burbank Card Show. The first time I'd ever been to a card show as someone setting a table up. Second card show I'd ever even been to. First one I've ever set up my own stuff. And thanks to Mama Break, Stephanie's been amazing, kind of at like bringing me into the community, and so let me work. I set up a table with them, which was amazing, and yeah, I had no idea what to expect. If people, I sell them a little bit on Whatnot here and there. Other people buy them from me and sell them on eBay, so I see that they sell, but I don't sell them on there. And I, just it came from like finding a bunch of my old '90s cards that I thought would be, the bastion of wealth that they were going to be, Jose Canseco rookies, and they weren't. And so I started just scribbling. I was like, I'm going to make these pieces of art then, and because that's I tend to do since I was a kid, just like scribble on something that's in front of me and try to make it look different and maybe cooler, hopefully. And started doing that, and people were like, "Oh man, can you make me a Clayton Kershaw card? Can you make me a Mark McGwire card?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude, for sure." And so started doing the same and then it started kind of working about year and a half ago, maybe a year ago. And it's wild how much it's taken off. It's definitely born from trying to write graffiti as a kid, not very well, and certainly not going to tell you what name I wrote to find where those are remnants of, but always, to your point too, loved the aesthetic. And as a skateboarder, you learn to look at the environment you're walking around in completely differently. I look at stairs differently than anybody else that doesn't skateboard. You look at a curb differently, and the distance between the grass and the curb differently than if somebody who doesn't skateboard and didn't use those things as like, tools to try tricks on. And I'm sure graffiti artists that really got up on trains and out in like New York and stuff, same idea. As soon as you see a new billboard, considering like, how can you get to it? And like that thing that you've been scribbling in your book, like how dope would that look up there or on that train? And the aspect of it being slightly dangerous or not allowed is as a skateboarder, it's very attractive to me that like all these art pieces aren't done like with as much time as it takes to do it with a crowd of people drinking coffee and applauding the person. That is done at night, hiding in a hoodie. And like, whenever you see, to your point, of something that's a little bit more dimensional and concept driven and well designed, it's even more impressive to me that was done on a train, outside in the train yard somewhere or wherever they found they could get on that thing. And I don't know, it's just super attractive to me that these people are willing to like put themselves on the line. They put their art out there.
It's creativity with constraints. And I know that sometimes, like, if I'm working on something and maybe, like, there's a difference. Like, if you have all day to work on something, sometimes you're like, okay, it could be a Saturday. Or if I'm like, oh, I have this idea, and I had some earlier today where I'm like, I want to do this. I was looking for it was a comic mashup because I'd done this comic corner, and I was like, you know what? Someone's like, oh, are you going to do a comic? I was like, oh, wait. So I started kind of doing it, but it's like once you start, like, I've got 15, 20 minutes, I'm kind of mashing this out, and your brain just thinks differently when there's a little bit of push on it, and you're starting to put together. It just 100%. Really feels like, it's like, if you're in the zone or whatever you want to kind of describe it, but it's a different feeling when you feel like there's something on the line. Almost feels like it helps you focus, like whether you're maybe
100%,
maybe you're drinking some caffeine or something, but there's just something that, it's just really, it's amazing how the mind works, but also, no different. It's just your brain is just working differently, but it excites you, and you go, there seems to be more possibilities when you have less time to do it.
For sure. Or again, a trickier space to work in, or that you could be arrested, or that if I fall on this trick, I could get really hurt. There's something different that your mind has to deal with and reason with and not think about at all to be able to do it well, and that's the coolest part about anything with consequence, I think.
Well, let's go back to the Burbank Card Show. Like, how did that kind of come about? I knew that Mama Breaks, Stephanie, she's really kind of coming to her own. She's had a lot of great opportunities and really has kind of put herself out there, but also has done a whole lot. And I think she kind of pivoted into Star Wars, but really has kind of carried it and has taken it to amazing places. But I want to know how you two kind of get to Burbank.
Yeah.
How's that happen?
Yeah. So, again, as I got the opportunity to work on Star Wars cards, somebody directed me to Whatnot, and it was around the same time. And so, I started to understand what Whatnot is as a collectible marketplace. And fairly quickly, again, when the Galaxy 22 was finally released, I was, jumping in all the rooms where it was released. And I felt so cheesy. Like, hey guys, I'm a sketch card artist on that set. Will you tag me if one of mine comes out? And it feels so check me out, but at the same time, I really did, again, want to connect with the community. I wanted to see you do these cards, you finish them and you send them back to Toppps. You don't ever know if you're going to see them again, if people are going to like them, if they're going to be valuable. There's so many factors that, you're considering and wondering about. And so fairly quickly, I realized that, Stephanie Mama Breaks, her Whatnot site was a big place for Star Wars collectors connecting. And she had done a really good job of, to your point, of curating a following and a experience there. She seemed really into it. It's the first time I ever met her, and very knowledgeable on, and I was new to it. So I was really benefiting from seeing other knowledgeable people in her rooms, and then found other people, of course. But she's rode some amazing rides into Fanatics and Fanatics Live, and doing some cool stuff. And she really is she's awesome because she is nerdy for Star Wars still. And she, at the Burbank Card Show that was in Ontario, I guess they do a couple different ones a year. That was the first card show I ever went to. Connected with the people that she sets up tables with, and was they were planning for this August Burbank show, and I was like, guys, can I what do I do? What do I need to do to get a table? And they were talking to the guys who run the Burbank Card Show, and they were like, oh, cool, yeah, we'll get you all connected. And then Stephanie unbelievably was just like, you know what, we're gonna put you with us. We're gonna get you. Oh, wow. And so they just added me as an additional table with their tables, and wrote me in along the whole way. And so another amazing dude, David, with LA Card Dude, LA Card Guy. I always mess that up for him, but he's LA Card Guy on Instagram. Apparently there's two different people, and we were laughing about it recently because I tagged the wrong one in a thank you post. No. And I was like, oh, yeah, exactly. Just like this. And so I figured it out and edited it. But he, LA Card Guy, David, amazing dude, does all the conventions and sets up a lot. And again, extremely knowledgeable, big Star Wars guy, has connected with a lot of people. So people come looking for his tables for Star Wars stuff. So they were just like, yeah, we'll set it up just tell us what you want to do. And I was like, I don't even have any idea, but I want to show my Star Wars sketch cards, but I don't have very many, as the artist returns policies have changed. It's kind of weird, but I have about 12 of them. So that's not really enough to set up a table and just sell those. So to your point about the Brady cards and the graffiti cards, it's something that doesn't take me very long to do. I can do it actively while sitting at a show. And so it was my attempt to have something I can actually do, as well as show my wood burnings and some other work I do, sell some of that stuff, hopefully. But again, do these custom cards, card art world, which I'm very new to as well, and had no idea what to expect. I knew some people would clown it and think this guy, But then I was hoping, like I do on Whatnot, sometimes somebody runs in there and likes it and wants one. And, at $20, I don't charge that much for something that is an original piece of art. At the end of the day, I sign the back of them. They're one of ones. They're one of a kind, because that's the only one in the world that's going to look like that when I'm done with it. And so to your point of collecting a rainbow of the autographs, if you collected a Sabine Wren rainbow and all of a sudden you see that same card, but done completely differently, I kind of need that to complete my super rainbow, double rainbow, and that's worked incredible for me. So I had no idea what to expect. I set up, and it couldn't have gone better for me as far as being motivating and busy, and the same people coming back the next day with more cards for me that they wanted me to do, and connecting with companies that are really interested in what I do and if I could do these things. Michael Rubin and Michael Mahan, because of their relationship with Stephanie, came by our booth, but they spent a few minutes talking to me and looking at what I do and interested in how that works and working on cards. So, I never try to count chickens or get ahead of myself, but it's cool to see that it was embraced and it's opportunistic more so than just, poo-pooed or left to the side. I'm sure some people walk by that way, but the motivation I felt at the end of that was shocking and incredible. I'm super grateful for it.
Well, and it's one thing to go to a card show. It's one thing to go to a card show or any show, like a convention, what have you, and you're kind of walking in the aisles, and then you're walking past, let's say, an artist alley, where they're kind of there, and depending upon how outgoing they are, or how much of an extrovert they are, a lot of times artists, you kind of find that they're good doing this stuff, but maybe they're then they've got the booth, they've gone through all this, but there is a bit of a hustle, there is a bit of an engagement, because you can't move, everybody else is moving. But here also, what I like about what you're doing there is that maybe let's say I'm working on a card, an existing card, and I'm adding something to it, where I'm not recreating the wheel, because I know I've sat with a lot of artists and they're trying to get in and out of a commission, but here is kind of something where it's like, that's just a card, but now it's something more. But it's also something where I could probably stop, I can probably do it. There's different levels of how much I want to put into it. Like you could go until infinity. And if you looked at some of I loved you bringing up those Project 2020s, because I have a couple of those, and those are really interesting, where you take a card that was already kind of neat, like a rookie card from say the 50s, like a Koufax or a Robinson, and now you're adding your own aesthetic to it. But here it's like I could go and you're like, all right, well, I'm going to move on to something else, but it's something a little more than just maybe it was a baby brace or a base card or whatnot.
Exactly.
But
and as we all know, there's a plethora, a never-ending amount of base cards with it, whether it's Star Wars cards or whatever. And so to find something to repurpose these, and it's tangible. It's not what I do with these cards is not. There's some amazing artists, Luke the Cardist, card carver, some great friends I've made that do incredible card art as well. So like you said, I'm not recreating the wheel, but I'm putting my kind of style onto it, and thankfully it's been received well. But they don't take too long. It's something that, again, for $20, it's worth it for me. It's worth it for a lot of the people that were willing to take one and buy one. And again, I think it's like you said, it's something that you've seen a bazillion times, the Billy Ripken F face bat, and now to see one that's kind of completely different with some art around it and some, like graffiti on it, like, wait a second, like, the amount of people, Bo Jackson cards, the amount of people that people would walk by and be like, oh, what, but yeah, it's really, to your point of being an extrovert, obviously owning a hair salon, having always worked in like the service industry, bellman hotels, waiter, like I like the people, I like to be around the people, and a lot of other artists that are amazing artists and can do unbelievable work, build this beautiful booth. But the interaction is hard. Like I've had artists tell me, like, you go in there and you watch like people open your cards, don't you get like nervous? I was like, I for sure would have at another point in my life. But this point in my life, I'm just grateful to be there. My work doesn't have to be, and I'm under no illusion that it's the best. I'm the best artist on these sets. Like I'm just really grateful that I get an opportunity to take something I love like Star Wars, put my own spin on it to some degree, and put it back in the world for anybody to at least even just have seen at this point. Whether they collect it, own it, resell it, whatever they do with it. Like the fact that I got to put one of mine in there and someone got to see it and I got to see someone see it, is an amazing experience for me. And I'm, again, so grateful for it. So I love that experience. I love being at that show and having these people that gave me a base Fernando Tatis card, and I did it all up and gave it back to him the next day. And they, shocked by how different it looks and how, that's so cool to me. And I'm grateful, enjoy it a lot.
And that's something else. It's like, like in working, I worked, Apple Store for 13 years. Having those conversations, like working in a salon, let's take it back to there, where you have to, on a day-to-day basis, probably one of the things that makes someone want to come back is the interaction they have with you. Now, you could kind of go on autopilot and come like, oh, how's the weather? You're looking fine.
Right.
But if you're trying to make a connection to someone in a very short time, and not be afraid to initiate, because I do think that sometimes when artists are there, it's like, they're watching the sea go past, and I think that your experience can vary. I don't care whether it's Michael Rubin, like, that, like, I might have a few minutes, but if they kind of see like, yeah, I'm just going to start it up, and oh, hey, and I don't know where this is going to go. Maybe it's just it starts off, but I start off, I'm showing a very pleasant self. And we're going to have for the minute or minutes that we're going to have, it's not a transactional experience. We used to call it like it's transformative experience where you're happy. Like, yeah, I can go to 15 other salons, or I can go to all these other booths, but at this particular place and with you, okay, I feel warm, I feel comfortable. They feel engaged, they feel interested in what I'm talking about, or I'm just like, hey. Versa. Yeah, and then sometimes that, oh wow, yeah, no, of course, yeah, let me grab one of those, or I hadn't even thought about it, but that was the experience, and I think that is something that even at a very early show for you, you're thrown in new experience, but it's like you kind of fall back on those old, like, oh yeah, I know how to talk to people. It's just I'm not talking about hair, I'm just talking about cards.
Right, and I didn't feel like I was like trying to sell my cards. I was just like, check it out. This is what I do. Like, I get to work on Star Wars stuff for Toppps. I get to do Marvel stuff. These are cards I take old base cards and just like turn them up. And like, here's some wood burnings that I get to like burn into some wood. And I don't, again, I don't treat this person differently if they're going to buy 50 of my cards or 0. But if they're at all interested in what I do, or kind of want to talk about it, or they would burn at home and they want to like that experience is fun. And I again, have learned to really enjoy that part of the experience, whether it's cutting hair, whether it's doing art, whether it's being a bellman and checking a person into their hotel back in San Francisco and Laguna Beach. And I met some amazing people. I've done Kamala Harris's hair for a long time in San Francisco, Linda Ronstadt's hair, up in San Francisco, and have met some amazing, unbelievable people, and have had incredible conversations and been the recipient of unbelievable, shocking stories, as well as have, we laugh about this as hairstyles, but like your clientele eventually really ends up like kind of mirroring your kind of attitude, I guess. Like, I worked with this woman who was so grumpy about life. She was a good hairstyle, but she was so down and out all the time. Everybody was against her, that kind of person. And all her clients would walk in the salon and I would know who that client was going to see before they even said, because it was just like, this lady was upset, and and then I tend to be pretty positive and pretty grateful and having a lot of fun in this experience, and I tend to have a clientele that's pretty outgoing and like, and to your point, like, is my haircut this much better, or that much more unbelievable than anybody else, or is the experience worth the amount of time and as good, or hopefully slightly better? But you think about, I need a haircut. Oh yeah, I'm ready to make a haircut, because you sort of like the person, and the experience that you expect to have had in the past and in the future. And that's a huge part of what you're selling when you are doing a service like hairstyling, more so than just like bringing food to a table or something. I think that's what ends up selling you or keeping you that person's hairstylist. There's a lot to do with how you interact with them, and how they interact with you.
Let me ask you this. If you had a chance to get out, what were some of the takeaways from the show that you either was like, oh, this is how it's done, or, oh, if something like this happens again, or I come back, I'll do this, or, because, it's a hobby. It's part of the hobby now that some things have evolved. I mean, I think one of the most striking things I saw at the National was the Whatnot, the wall of monitors, and they had the draft. I think it was the Whatnot Super Bowl or something like that, where you're just like, this is way different.
Right.
But it's amazing the differences. But being at one of your first shows, what are some of the takeaways you saw, and what were your kind of thoughts of Burbank?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, it is a lot of work, and setting up, and again, my first one ever. So I bought a banner like a week before, made a banner of my stuff, bought a couple like Temu things that I could put some of my wood burnings on, like little racks. And so it was a learning experience, to say the least, but I had no expectations. And I think that's the key, is I was left very positively because I didn't expect to sell anything or have a good interaction with anybody or have any company come talk to me about what I do. I talked a lot to Tag, and they were very interested in what I do. I talked a lot to Onnit, the college licensor of cards, and very opportunistic with some new opportunities with them to do some stuff. So I think I learned that it's a lot of work, and there's things that work. I thought I was going to be doing actual like sketch cards, even like, kind of quicker sketch cards. And that was shut down very quickly when I realized, like, also trying to talk to someone and interact with someone and keep working was always going to be too complicated for me to do a good job. So the graffiti cards are way easier to do that. And so realized really quickly, like, what works, how much less stuff I could bring next time. And then truthfully, the biggest thing I think I learned is that I really do enjoy it. I don't think I would want to be on the circuit of doing this all the time and taking all my stuff with me but a couple shows a year, a couple of opportunities to get like a guest artist at other people's things that I've been offered but never taken yet. I would love to do. So there's definitely ways to do it that I think would be very super beneficial, both to me and for the experience that I have with the community. And as I get to do more projects, bunch of which I can't even talk about yet, I definitely think there's going to be more opportunities to be in front of the people and amongst the people, which I love. Like I said, I love that part.
That's cool. Something to bring it into sketch cards, and we kind of touched on it a little bit about your vinyl collection and others. I am kind of curious, and I don't know if I have ever asked this from a sketch card artist. I am curious, how do you catalog your own work? We talked about, once you finish a set, and it could be 2 years ago, you finish it in a flurry, you ship it back. Maybe you take some shots of it. I see a lot of times when a set's coming out and the NDA is kind of lifted, where they go, this is what I was working on, and then you'll see that for the first. But as far as like, once you get X number of sets in, and you've said that you've done a number of sets, how do I kind of go back and keep a record of what I've done, especially with characters? Marvel and Star Wars are a wash in characters. How do you kind of keep it so that maybe either you're not repeating yourself, or okay, I've done enough of that, or like, even if it was done in a couple different profile shots, I want to try to make sure I'm not just kind of doing the same old, and maybe I have time to challenge myself with something different.
This is where I needed you 2.5 years ago, Greg, because I am shockingly unprepared to be organized. And it's a big part of why I think what I do sort of works, and the way I do it is different. And it maybe is what's sort of cool to look at, because it is different. But it's also why I was never very good at school. It's why hard to stay focused on anything I'm not interested in. If I'm interested in it, it's a superpower that I have. I can be hyper-focused, and I can throw my whole self into getting better at it. If I'm not interested in it, I cannot get myself to complete it. But when it comes to keeping all of this stuff organized, not well. I take pictures of it right when it's done. I try to remember to put them in my favorites, and I most of the time forget. And then the set is finally released, and then I have to go back to when in my photos and find when I sent these pictures to Toppps. And because I try now to make sure I at least take a picture individually of every card, because I didn't do that for the first few sets.
Oh, wow.
And then had wished I had to kind of be able to show some individual cards rather than just like groupings of cards. And so now I'm much better at, no matter what set it is for which company, I take an individual picture of every card, and then the group because we send them in as like, PDFs of the groupings of like 6 to 8 cards per page. So I always have those, but I try to, again, make sure I take it. So the question of how do you not get redundant, or how do you not do too much of the same stuff? It's a really great question. And I mean, if anybody was really smart, they would just do 40 Vaders and 40 Yodas, because that's sort of like the most selling, characters. But it gets hard to get excited for me personally about doing the same characters or using the same tools all the time. And I guess, for better or worse, that is the thing I enjoy most about my sketch card road and ride so far, is that I'm trying stuff in front of the whole world. Every set that comes in, I got an airbrush kit for Christmas. I trying a gouache paints for the first time, and I'm not trying them out like on some practice material. Like a new set shows up, and I'm like, yep, here we go. And there's been some successes, there's been some failures, there's been some all right that almost worked, but works well enough to be passable. But I think I'll get better at that. And some stuff I'll never try that again. But that's the most fun part of it for me, is like taking these ideas in my head, or seeing an image that we've seen 1,000 times of Empire Strikes Back that's been seen, and trying to circumvent an idea out of it and change it and put some different bright colors. You can't, it's interesting. The rules for Star Wars cards specifically are they're pretty specific and they're fairly obvious, but they're also pretty open as far as like, okay, we're doing a Star Wars set, go. Whereas when I work on some of the sports sets for Toppps, they're like, here's the specific 30 players you're going to do, and here's the actual specific picture of that player that you have to work from. So it takes a lot of the work out of it to go find a good picture of that player, but it also obviously can be limiting as far as like, here it is. Whereas again, as a Star Wars fan, it's fun for me to go watch The Mandalorian again, specifically to find cool scene to draw or paint. And I do a lot of watercolor, I do a lot of alcohol markers, a little bit of airbrush, a lot of micron pens. And again, for me, that whole like just trying it in a new set and seeing if it works, or seeing this combination of materials or tools, is definitely the most fun part of working on them, trying it. I'm sure I've done the same scene a few different times, but I've again tried to do it in a different enough way that it doesn't feel like I'm just recycling something. Yeah. And, being a Star Wars fan these days, like it or not, like every show they make or not, or every animated show they make or not, we have a lot of stuff to work from. So it doesn't feel like, we're going to run out of material to get to work on and from and utilize. And I think that's, I'm grateful for that too.
Yeah, and just looking at some of the ones where there's a little bit of an airbrush, I think one of my favorites in just looking at it is that Vader. You have a side profile of Vader that has an airbrush, kind of like he's kind of part of the background, but then there's a little bit of the farm in there, the Tatooine farm, that's kind of like
scene, yeah.
And then
that one was like a hopeful, opportunistic. So I guess to get back to the point too, like if they give you 50 cards to work on, you have to do 50 cards. Like people ask us all the time, do they give you like extras in case you don't like it or you messed up? And like, nope, they do not. And if you get 50 cards, you said you were going to do 50 cards, you have to send back 50 cards. Like you can, I've never done this. Let me knock on wood because I don't want to do this on this next card I work on later tonight. Like you can apparently like write void on it if there's one you really don't like, or like spilled coffee on, didn't work. But you have to send the card back because they're afraid that you're keeping the cards. And we've had, this is a big problem. This is not mine to legislate, but certainly a problem within the sketch card world, especially for Disney and Star Wars and Toppps, of these cards making it to the market blank and being sold, and other people doing art that would be completely not ever approved by Lucasfilm, making it to eBay. And all the cards that we do have to be approved by someone at Lucasfilm to make it into a Toppps set. So, we sign these contracts, we're licensed Lucasfilm's approved artists for these sets. And so we take it seriously and we're grateful. I am. And, to see, so you can't, I guess to what I'm talking about, you can't mess up and then just be like, rip that one up, throw it away. And so when I was working on the Vader helmet and using an airbrush for the first time, I mean, I've done some other airbrush stuff, but like this idea, I really liked it. I kind of saw it in my head how it could work. But with an airbrush, if you kind of mess it up with it, because that one's only just black and white and basically just black airbrush paint and a little bit of a white gel pen. So if I fat thumbed a little tiny bit too hard with the airbrush, like the whole shebang doesn't work anymore. And so there's no real easy way to clean that up. Certain cards you can kind of clean up with some different ideas, but that one, and funny enough, there was supposed to be some more stuff. Like I was going to kind of clean up the border around it. But then I was like, you know what? I just sort of like how this just feels like it was just like thrown like on there. And I'm just going to leave that, and it ended up definitely being kind of the most well-received cards I've ever done for sure.
I also love, I'm assuming the white gel pen was also used on some of these other vehicles where you have
so
like,
many
of
the outline.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. The outline for me, that's such a comic book concept for me. Is like looking at comic book artists that I really love when they're trying to, make sure that this character looks a little bit more foregrounded than the background, but you still want this elaborate background. Like that white outline really does a really nice job of like, you don't notice it until you look at it and then you notice it obviously, but it really does foreground the image for you and kind of separates it from the background, but doesn't feel like it's not part of the background anymore. And I don't know, I've used that a lot since I kind of found that, and certainly a lot with my ships too, because obviously a lot of ships are in space and the outline of my ships would sort of disappear if I didn't do something like that. So yeah, I guess that's the idea.
Yeah, I'm going to invite listeners to, if you go to Ian's Instagram page and you scroll down, you'll find the vehicles one where, and the trench run is first now, and look at that. And then if you scroll, there's a Mining Guild TIE Fighter where it looks like it's a regular it's a white shadow, but look at the two differences in the Millennium Falcon one is really striking because you really get a nice outline of it. And you think about, this kind of goes back to a lot of times it's like old photographs where someone you could tell someone has put an outline around it, whether they drew it or painted it or whatnot to give that subject a little more of an outline. But in this case, it's something similar. Yeah, because you could say like, I'm putting a dark ship against a space background. It kind of gets lost, whereas you kind of get the white gel pen, and it's something very simple. You're just tracing around it. Really makes it pop.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's definitely, again, one of those ones I tried on something, and I was like, yep, I like that. And I tend to I use a lot of color. I try to make things pop. I try to make, again, it's kind of that graffiti idea of like doing some border work around something to make it look like it's so much dripping or spurting out color in the background or something. And so it's an easy, but I tend to outline everything I do. I tend to, there's some unbelievable realism artists that I'll never understand how they do what they do. I tend to outline the eyes of my characters still, and like the shape of the body still. I tend to use that black micron pen to outline all of my ships. So if it was in space with that black micron pen outline, for sure, it's now just like my outline is also in space, so it sort of needs something to kind of pop it back out. And thankfully it looks kind of cool. So, and those gel pens were a savior, because at first I was trying to paint little like white paint outlines, and then I found these gel pens and I was like, oh my God, my life just got infinitely easier.
Oh man. Yeah, that, and like I said, I think it's the thing that I often worry about, especially with sketch cards, and you're talking about like the process of getting this approved by Lucasfilm is like, and going back to you're kind of like doing what you're doing at the Burbank Card Show when you were kind of like adding on to an existing card. This is stuff that you want Michael Rubin to see, because I'm like, look, the last thing we want is for Toppps to kind of go, it's a lot of trouble. the superfractors and the numbered parallels are a little easier to generate, and we can kind of like crank those out. It takes a lot of work to get not only your cards back, but all these other artists that are involved in this set. And at the same time, yes, there's a compensation thing. Yes, you want to make sure that everything is accounted for, but you want to make sure that it keeps going on, because I think this is the kind of thing that makes sets special. And yes, as they're harder to get than they used to be, but at the same time, you want to kind of keep Toppps going, hey, look, this is still worth it to do. We can always tweak the process, but look what we're getting, and you're getting something more. It's the same thing with the whole Fanatics Fest, where it's like it's this, they're trying to put a little more hype and a little more showbiz, and I'm like, this is all a part of it, because what's going to keep the hobby going is not thinking the way, and brands like Toppps can be, can get set in stone of like, yep, this is how we done it. And, you want to think out of the box, and maybe it takes, doing something like this to go, well, we didn't really think about that, but hey, it pushes the hobby forward.
And, get to that point, Luke, the cardist, is an amazing on-card artist who's been working for a long time. I only found him fairly recently. An amazing dude. Again, these people that are trying to connect and make cool stuff and being like positive about other people making cool stuff are the people that I'm trying to ride with. And he is very much one of those. And his stuff is now in official baseball releases, the Series 1, Series 2, normal baseball Toppps releases. They have his one-of-ones where they send him a card of Mookie Betts in advance. He does art right on it, puts it back in there. So it is a thing that's being embraced, which is so cool for all of us. The rising tide concept with Angel Avilas and sketch cards, and Andrew Fry, and Josh Trout, and these people who are, there's so many. So to be impossible for me, Andrew, for all these guys who are just, and women that are doing incredible work and lifting all of our boats by taking sketch cards from a sketch to a piece of art, a masterpiece to some degree of art. And to get a one-of-one original piece of art, not a reproduction, not a stamp that says this is the only one, and that's the only way it's a different color or something. This is actually an original piece of art that person sat on at their desk and did this art on, and didn't reproduce it. It's not a parallel. It is a original, only one. Is still a really cool, thing to run across. Whether it's your favorite artist, favorite character, favorite art or not, it still is pretty incredible to think that somebody put that time onto that thing and sent it back in, and it can be randomly in a pack. And just today I found someone put one of my cards I did for this recent Marvel set in China. It just showed up, and now it's on eBay. So these things go all over the world, and people collect them in all different languages and experiences, and it's really cool to see that being valued and appreciated. And the people at Toppps, and I only know this through other people that I know, are really enjoying and embracing this idea, and thankfully have foresight and some artists that are really interested in being involved, that they're adding this idea into more sets and more sports, which is great for me, and more opportunities, I guess. And I am just really grateful, and it's really fun to see it progress and where it could go.
Awesome. Well, I know our time is about up. It goes really fast.
It does, for sure.
But just to let some folks know where they can kind of find you, and what obviously can't tell you what you can't say what you're working on, but if there's anything else you can tell about, like, hey, this is where I engage at, this is where you can find me, and can you let us know?
For sure. Thank you again so much for this opportunity. I know we've been trying to connect on it for a long time. But this is a really fun time to be a Star Wars fan. It's an amazing time to be a Star Wars artist, and be able to work for companies like Toppps and Upper Deck and get to work on these fun projects. So I'm glad we finally made it happen. I'm on Instagram. It's probably the easiest. I try to be super engaging through my messaging and messages and DMs and comments. And I'm just at Ian McKesson. I'm at the same place on Whatnot. I try to do about a show. I'd say it's more like every 2 weeks now. So not too often, depending on deadlines and other projects, but I try to jump on there, and I'll either be doing live art or kind of going through some of the recent art that I've already done, or sometimes I'll even try to do like a break of the new Toppps Chrome, and I include my graffiti cards as like a spot. Like, let's say you got the Bad Batch spot, I do like a wrecker that I did the graffiti on, and so you buy the Bad Batch spot and you could get a wrecker. You get the wrecker, and then hopefully anything that comes out of the box. So I don't do very many breaks. Certainly I'm not trying to compete for space there, but I would love to see one of my sketch cards come out of my on my own show. It has not happened yet, but it's a really fun engagement again with the community, and people ask a lot of questions, and I could speak from the experience as a sketch card artist. And what I can't tell exactly what we're working on, but it is exciting, and we're still getting invites all the time, and it only feels like more and more right now, in the sense of like opportunities, new things happening. Again, some unbelievable new artists that are working on these things, and I think it feels very well received, and like that it's only going to continue into a more interesting place.
Fantastic. Well, I'm excited that you're getting these opportunities, and especially excited that you had a chance to do the Burbank card show, and get in with this community. And once again, thanks to Stephanie over at Mama Breaks for getting you in the action, and also getting you in front of Michael Rubin, so he can see how cool these cards are and some possibilities. At any rate, it was a pleasure to have you on, and thank you. And we'll talk soon.
I hope so. Thank you for everything you do as well, the Rebel Base Card.
Thank you.
Can I offer you a libation to celebrate the closing of our shared narrative?
This is Jalen Warner, and you're listening to the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Great pull, kid. Don't get cocky.
All right, once again, my thanks to guest Ian McKesson for being on the program. It was a pleasure to get a chance to talk with him, talk about all this goodness that we seen recently, not only in the Toppps Chrome, Star Wars, but exciting that we've got hopefully some releases that'll be out at some point soon, but also to kind of find a little bit about behind the scenes as far as what happens when you are at a card show. And I love I always love talking about the process. It's always fascinating to find out what makes folks tick, how they kind of add, their personal lives and their process, because a lot of times you just see the end product and you have no idea how it's done. So this is one of the things that I love doing on this program. It's been a while since we've had an artist on, and we'll have to get back to getting some more on. So hopefully stay tuned for more of that. All right, I'm going to let you go. We're going to talk soon, and see you later.
The Rebel Base Card Podcast focuses on cards, collecting, and the Star Wars community, and appreciates you coming along for the ride.
If you have any feedback for this episode, you can reach out to the program in a number of ways. You can leave a comment on the Instagram post for this episode. You can also DM Greg on Instagram at Rebel Base Card.
Make sure to also follow the Rebel Base Card on Twitter and Facebook at Rebel Base Card. If you want, you can send an email to greg@rebelbasecard.com.
And you can find show notes for this and all episodes on the website rebelbasecard.com. In the Star Wars Card Trader app and just about every other one, you can find Greg at CornFedTech.
The Rebel Base Card uses the hashtag Card Squadron as a way to alert friends about cool cards and recent drops in the galaxy far, far away. It's a great way to bring our community a little bit closer together and help one another finish our sets in time. We collect, communicate, and commiserate. Well, at least when we run out of credits or crystals to spend on our digital collections. Join the fun, even if all the other cool squadron names were already taken. And remember, we collect as one and would be honored if you join us.
And if you are a sketch card artist, or Star Wars artist or collector, cosplayer, and want to talk about your work, your craft or passion, drop Greg a line. I'm sure he'd love to hear your story. You can also help the show by leaving a comment or review on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you got this episode.
Otherwise, the mission is clear. Keep those cards out of the hands of the Empire, and the Rebel Base Card will return soon.
This podcast is not affiliated in any way with Toppps, Disney, or Star Wars, nor is it endorsed by Disney or Lucasfilm, and is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All names and sounds and any other related items are properties of their respective trademarks and or copyright holders here in the U.S. and abroad. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com.